had a cohort of, I believe, social studies teachers going through Blend Flip 1. And so they asked me if I would like to join in their cohort. And so I didn't have any idea what I was doing or what we were going for. So I went through that and it kind of just piqued my interest a little bit. So I continued through the Blend Flip classes. And then from there, I ended up taking all of the classes for the Drake certification just because I felt like they all made sense. And once I learned something, I needed another piece to it. And so I continued on until I got the Drake certification. And through that, I was able to build a lot of curriculum or things I was able to use in my classroom. And so it just kind of made sense. And then through that, I also built an online English class that we're mimicking from our traditional class. And so we're able to use that right now. I teach special ed, so less of my class is necessarily flipped, but more of it is used for kind of that specially designed instruction. So I have kids in my room that have all sorts of needs. So one kid might only have a math goal, where another student might have an employability goal, and another one might have a reading and math and writing goal. And so there's always so many things going on at the same time. So when you have these other pieces in your toolbox, I could have one student be working on creating a resume online, and I could have one student doing some math while I'm working one-on-one with a small group of students. And so really, it's freed up some of my one-on-one or small group time where kids can be doing something that I know I created, so I know it's exactly what they want or need. And I can then work more independently or one-on-one with smaller groups of kids. And so I felt like it's been really meaningful in structuring our time. And I know that they're getting what they need when I can't be with everybody at the same time. It takes a while, I think, for them to get it or to understand how to use it or what to do. So one of the things that I kind of learned, especially working in special ed, is that your content can't just all be delivered through text because they're not necessarily all great readers. And so I've learned to incorporate the videos, and I found that videos of myself actually teaching have been much more beneficial than just pulling something into the instruction. And so when it's me teaching them, they buy into it. The other thing I've really noticed with my kids is that their on-task behavior and their ability to do some of the things independently is much higher than if I was teaching a whole group to them. And so there were some kids, I've been really working with ed puzzles this year, incorporating them more into my lessons. And it's been really amazing what some of my kids have been able to do and show through ed puzzles that I didn't think they could do before. I'm always willing to try something new. So people know that if they're going to ask me to do something, like it's always worth an opportunity to try because I love kind of learning about new things. That's just who I am. And so once I started, then I could see the buy-in, and then I wanted to kind of learn more of how to do it. Like, how would you do that? And so that's where it really started. Then it went so much deeper just in creating an actual online class. Like that was so much work, and it took so much more conceptual understanding of how can someone actually learn when they're not in my physical presence. And so that took so much more understanding that I felt like I needed more training and education on how to assess things and how to formatively assess. And so I just felt like from there I needed more training and I had more buy-in. The other thing that I've kind of learned through this process is that once I've built something, it's alive in there. And so I have other special ed teachers that are saying, hey, can you share that resume and cover letter lesson? I want to do that with my kids, or we're going to do that in reading class because we're going to practice interviewing. And so we really focused a lot of what I built initially on employability because that transfers to every level of special ed. And honestly, it transfers to every level of kid in high school. And so we have that content built now that we can use that for whoever needs it, even if they don't have a class that teaches it or they don't have a period that works out, we can still teach those skills. A lot of the just individual lessons I was building in soft chalk. And then putting it in the personalized learning system took a lot more thoughts of when are we stopping a kid from moving on. And so one of the things you know when you're teaching is that class moves on even if your kids don't. And so when we built the English class, it was kind of nice because we could put a gate or stop kids. And if they weren't meeting the standard or whatever we were looking for, they couldn't go past that. And so it's almost that you're setting kids up to be guaranteed to be successful because they aren't going to get to move further until they have it exactly where it needs to be. And so that's been helpful in the English class building because we've been able to determine when is something going to stop someone and what is formative as opposed to summative. So there's a lot of things we do in classes that we might grade as a quiz or a summative, and we just looked at it closer as to what are the needs that meet the standards and what are just things to show progress along the way. So I think it just makes you really identify what are the most important things that you're teaching in your class. The one thing people will see is kids doing all sorts of different things. So very rarely is a whole group doing the exact same thing at the same time. And the fun thing about teaching special ed is you really teach what kids need. And so even if I teach 2 life skills class, one group of kids might be doing one thing and one group of kids might be doing something else. And so I've been able to front load a lot of like social emotional skills through the computer. And then we're able to come back together and talk about like different situations or what did you see or, how perspective taking, things like that. And so really, if you walked in my classroom, kids are doing all sorts of different things. And for the most part, kids know what they're supposed to be doing. You have to spend a lot of time front loading, like, what do I do? How do I get on here? What do I do when I'm finished? And I found it beneficial to now create checklists for kids that gives them an idea of where am I at? What did I get accomplished? What do I still need to do? And so I think we're trying to build more checklists into our online classes too, just to give kids and teachers a gauge of how long it's taking them to get things done. But I would say it's certainly lots of things going on at the same time. There's just so much more out there that can be created. And so the exciting thing for me is that I've spent this time building, and as I pass on my classroom to another teacher, I know that stuff is still there. So whether that teacher decides to use it or not, it's been built, it's been implemented, students are familiar with it. So it will be able to be used for a brand new teacher coming in who maybe has never taught those things before. So I think that's exciting for me. I would love to work more closely with like the social emotional pieces of special education and how we work through some of those issues as those become bigger. I think those are some things that we gloss over and not knowing how to instruct for, but they're a major issue in schools. And so I would love to do more research into those components. And I really have focused this year a lot on some of the adaptive and emotional needs that kids have online, but I think there are a lot more things to do. One of the takeaways for me just in going through a lot of these classes online is that learning online is so different than learning in the traditional classroom. And so for me, it was harder. It's harder for me to take online classes than it is to sit in a class and just kind of absorb it. And so I've really had to learn about how to teach online because it just seems so easy. Like you just post it and kids will get it. And it's not. So I think that's one of the big takeaways is just how difficult and how much broader you have to think. You have to anticipate every single question or issue that's going to arise without actually knowing what those are. And so it's been kind of eye-opening in that sense of just learning how to learn online. And I think students are going to have to learn how to learn online as well. So technology is not an issue for kids. It's, what they do all the time, but it's still not the same as struggling in the classroom and struggling on the computer. So I think that's kind of one of the big things, is just teaching kids how to learn online, just like I had to learn how to self-regulate and get off Facebook or Pinterest or whatever off-task things I like to do to avoid my work. It's going to be important that we're teaching kids how to be successful online. Just reflecting back, it's one thing to try to build something, but just building an entire course globally just takes so much time. And so I think if I was going to recommend someone to build a course, I would hope that we would have some of the content already built, other than starting from scratch, because I think I made a lot of mistakes along the way that I wish I wouldn't have done, because they're so time consuming, just in the little details of using pictures that aren't cited correctly or things like that. And so I think the courses, the blend flip courses, and actually all of the courses to the Drake certification are actually pretty essential to being successful in creating an online class, not just the one course that we were requiring. And so I saw people really struggling who hadn't taken the blend flip class and the assessment classes and things like that. The other thing I would do differently would be not to create a course at the same time while I was taking all those courses. Just because it was a lot. And so, those are kind of the mistakes I made and the learning. And I'm still going through my course and making corrections and fixing links. And it's an ongoing process. And it takes a lot of time when a student emails you and says, this isn't working. And so you have to go back and figure out, because it might look okay on my end and not hers. So it just takes a lot of time to manage and teach an online class. And I think maybe I blindly thought it would be easy, and it's not. My next steps are going to be helping other teachers get through some of this process and implementing things and strategies for teaching online. And I want to help teachers review their classes and look at the bigger pictures and the questions that kids are going to have when going through, because it's easy for us to assume a lot because we teach it. And so we're just natural experts in whatever we're teaching. And so from here, I'm really hoping to take a bigger piece of our online program at the high school and really help teachers in working through some of those issues.